Ever wonder what happened to the crazy, beautiful people of the swinging 60s, who sang All You Need Is Love and grew up believing the world would be a better place, full of free love, free drugs, and free sex? Well, they turned into the most discontented generation in history. Disillusioned, exasperated, irritated, downright bloody grumpy.
All these trendy Wendy's destroying education. I want to kill them.
It's the cult of the moron.
Politician after politician gets up there and talks a load of crap.
Burglars' rights are seriously advanced as a concept.
Everyday swearing is marvellous.
Venal, disgusting, revolting.
All you've got left in life is to hate Manchester United, because Liverpool aren't going to win anything.
I'm very, very much in favour of feminists, especially the ones with really big tits, you know. I mean...
The drug-induced dreams of our grumpy old men have all turned to dust. And since it can't possibly be our fault, we have to work out who on earth to blame. So we blame bloody women. We blame our kids. We blame politicians. We blame the royal family. And, of course, we blame the telly.
And I blame the whole kind of... I blame everybody, in fact, except me.
So where did it all start to go wrong? As young Brits in the 60s and 70s, we thought we had it all. Great clothes, great music, and great sex. The trouble was that the same freedom that meant that women could have sex with us also gave them freedom from some of the other shackles of the past, such as looking after us.
For centuries, thousands of years, we got away without doing the washing up, without being attentive, good dads and crap in bed.
I must go and get the boys' supper on.
We were marvellous at that for thousands of years, and now, all of a sudden, we're expected to look at, you know, white bottoms and be there at the school and cook dinner and do all these things. We're not used to it, and we should try, we men. But it's hard because we've had millions of years of being the boss and doing nothing.
I don't understand women. I love them dearly. I do. I adore women. It's probably half my problem. I love women's company. I love being with women. I love... I'm an old-fashioned type of romantic. I like going out for dinner and doing the things. I like going on trips. I don't understand them.
Virtually every single woman I've been out with makes an issue of how much sport I watch, and there's always this thing about, oh, you're not watching sport again, are you? Oh no, oh God, it's not football again. Like I'm doing something, you know, you'd think like I was like sticking a skewer through my head or something.
And not content with undermining the way we're used to doing things, modern women make it all worse by being so much more emotionally well-balanced than we are.
I mean, you watch women talking, they're straight into sort of emotions and sort of like illnesses and sex and all that stuff. And men just don't talk like that. You've got to find something to talk about, to have any sort of sense of, you know, unless you're completely plastered.
Women are all sitting around at weddings talking about, oh, doesn't she look lovely, or it won't last, or he's having an affair, blah, blah, blah. It's all about people and relationships. Bloke says, so which way did you come then? Well, I came on the B106. Oh, you come that way, did you? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, well, I come on the motorway, which is it's quicker, but it's actually longer. Oh, right, yeah. What are you driving nowadays? You know, I've got Vectra outside.
And while we were talking about the inside leg measurement of the overhead camshaft, women were talking about sweeping away the shackles of the past. Women's lib. We didn't mind them burning their bras. Indeed, that had a welcome upside. It's just that we felt our sensitive areas might be next on the arson list.
Judy goes ballistic if I don't open the car door for her. I have a colleague who's recently left us, a woman, who several times after we'd had a meeting, we'd cross the corridor for lunch and she'd be in front of me and I'd open the door for her and she'd bristle. This is an intelligent, professional, likeable, humorous woman, but she got very cross and it was a lot of anger had been building up inside her, and she said, well, it's because it's patronising. I said, I don't mean it to be. So, no, you don't. That's what's called unconscious sexism.
I think men are very confused about what a man should be, because there was that awful sort of tying willies in knots period in the sort of 70s and 80s where men were sort of, you know, going to men's groups and feeling really guilty about the fact that they were born into the wrong sex. And then there was the backlash and the sort of new laddism where it seemed to be fine to be into pornography and into being loutish.
You know, it's like feminism never happened. It's like going back in time. It's all gone end of the pier. And the blokes are all a bit want their dinner on the table. You know, it's all a bit like, where are you? Where were you? Come on, here you are. You think, hang on, what is that? Where have you seen? Did you watch a movie or something?
After millions of years of striving to be the alpha male, for the breadwinner who came home and wanted his tea on the table, it was all very difficult. One way of coping, our grumpy old men were told, was to get in touch with their feminine sides. And to be fair, some of them tried.
You know, I had this theory that I was a bit of a new man. And my theory was that you could measure how much of a new man you are by how far you let a girl or a woman go past you in the street, walking the other way, that you quite fancy, before you turn round and have a look at her bottom. And I reckon I'm about a 5-yarder, which is pretty good going, actually. Don't get much more new than that.
There's this phrase, just gay enough, which is ridiculous, really, because it's nothing to do with being gay. But, you know, a guy might oil his motorbike, come up, have a shower, make passionate love to his girl, and then whiz up a beautiful spaghetti carbonara for both of them. Classic instance is David Beckham. The time when Ferguson kept him on the substitutes bench, he then came onto the pitch, scored an absolutely brilliant and absolutely essential goal while wearing an Alice band. I thought times are very strange. You know, Tom Finney, eat your heart out.
Well, it seems to me that there is a viable model of masculinity there to be reassumed, and it's to do with the concept of honour. Terribly unfashionable. It's to do with keeping your promises. It's to do with comporting yourself. It's to do with not exploiting people sexually. It's to do, dare I say it, with exercising restraint and fidelity in certain contexts. And we've kind of forgotten about that stuff.
So, to be what was called a new man, we had to adjust all our natural behaviour to accommodate the new demands of women. We were just getting used to that when, somewhere along the line, we found ourselves doing the same for the kids.
There seems to have been some sort of trick played on my generation, whereby when we were children, we had to do everything that the grown-ups were doing, so that when my parents went to the pub, I'd be sitting in the car fighting with my brother, emptying the reservoir on the windscreen washers and reading the AA road manual for 1966. Where now that I've grown up, I spend my time sitting on miniature trains and riding around Chessington World of Adventures, doing exactly what my children want to be doing. And I'm not quite sure where the contract was altered.
I really do want a reversal back to my youth when my old man pitched up. Once in my school career, I didn't feel that I was being abandoned. I didn't want him near the school. I didn't want my teachers talking to him, you know. He showed up once when I was, I think, in the black and white minstrels. There I was in, like, you know, black tie going, you know, oh, Joanna, whatever I was doing. You know. Now, for 20 years, I've been showing up at these woeful assemblies where the children chirp with their dreadful spare me child choruses. Let's not pretend anything. School plays are universally and uniformly shite. And, you know, if you don't have your camera to film your loved one, you know, the children feel somehow put out. There's a scrum at the front. And there is a scrum of parents jostling and standing up to hear drivel. It has to be said, you know, drivel. I know they're trying to make the children and the parents feel involved. Go away. Leave us alone. We're adults, they're children.
My mother always said, interesting and amusing woman and very popular, but not particularly maternal. And she always used to say that she never really understood what we were for. And, I mean, I don't understand what our children are for, but, you know, we get on well enough that they can call me a dozy prick and stuff like this. If I'd wanted to call my dad something like that, I'd have had to get in the car, drive into Wales, think it, and then come back again. You know, I mean, I wouldn't have dared say anything like that.
And while you and your brother were sent to the school down the road, made to wear your tie and cap, bullied by the lower sixth and told to be grateful, today it's all so much more complicated. Everywhere we look, hyper-parented little Damians and Chloes, nothing's too good for them, all dressed up, overindulged and overconfident little tykes who need a good slapping.
I am getting increasingly grumpy about snobby people not admitting they're snobs. They say things like, little Timothy, my little Timothy, he's very bright, you know, so we think we're going to have to send him private. And it's like, well, so my kid's really stupid, is he? That's why I'm going state. My little Jonathan's particularly stupid, so we're going for the state sector. And they'll say things like, oh, we would have loved to go to the local primary, but we just couldn't get in. We couldn't get in. And it's like, right, so you wrote one letter and didn't hear and didn't follow up with a phone call. So they'll spend £10,000 sending their kid off to some expensive, driving them in the 4x4 halfway across London to go to some expensive ghetto where all the children are exactly like them.
We spent 50,000 years climbing out of the swamps, and we get out and we produce children who are absolutely useless. I can't, you know, they get to teenagers and they... you know, I mean, they go washing up in a cafe or something and they complain the work's too hard. Absolutely. Wankers.
Which is more or less what their parents thought about the layabouts who grew up to be today's grumpies, who then went off to university to do what you're supposed to do at university. Take mind-expanding drugs and talk till 4 in the morning about the meaning of life and plan tomorrow's demo against American imperialism. But that's not good enough for the kids of today, is it? Oh, no. All they care about is passing their exams and repaying the student loan so they can get on the housing ladder.
And what students are absolutely preoccupied by is the fact that they have to take out massive bank loans in order to get themselves through college. And I think that does put off people from entering higher education from less economically privileged backgrounds, and let's make no bones about it. But I do think that higher education should be a time when you do sit around having a lot of sex and doing recreational drugs, learning a bit, and being radical. Yeah, that's what it's about. The students should be an absolute hotbed of radicalism, and they certainly aren't. They're a rather cold, limp, IKEA duvet of subscribing to the kind of careerist policies that our current government enshrine just as well as Thatcher did.
Young people, as we were then, looked outwards and really thought that we could change the world. We wrote personally to the White House and to the President, and we got replies. We thought we were talking sense, really, when we knocked on the door of number 10 to hand in yet another petition. But all that's gone. The only thing that really fires up students today is their own affairs. They're not really interested in the world. They're interested in their world.
But can we really blame them? Look at the drivel they had to listen to when they were growing up. Political correctness. All that rubbish from Brussels. All those new rights that we'd done without for thousands of years and were suddenly inalienable. A new TV station for the Welsh. All those pointy-faced local councillors policing everything around us. More and more bloody nonsense. Little men and little women in council offices working out new ways in which we can offend each other. Leftovers of the loony left.
Councillors are nothing more than sort of local busybodies. You know, they would be the neighbour from hell complaining, only they've elevated it to a sort of politics. They're the lowest rung of the party political ladder. They're the loudmouths and the activists who think they're creating world revolution by stopping a hot cross bun or by flying the EU flag only and not the Union Jack or the Jacks, which drives the local people mad. They're just doing it to be provocative like your neighbour would by snipping the ear off your topiary hedge, rabbit or something, you know.
Everyday swearing is marvellous. I think there should be more swearing all the time, frankly. You know, a well-timed swear word is a terrific thing, and it doesn't mean that you lack a vocabulary. When you lack a vocabulary, when you go, do you know what I mean? Thing is, at the end of the day, basically, like literally, do you know what I mean? That's bad language, in my opinion, not bollocks to you, you twat.
The women love it, you know. And I'd much rather have a 90% female audience because you get better laughs and you can be much ruder.
And then there's our middle-class paranoia about our kids. Today we're so obsessed with hygiene that all our kids have allergies. So obsessed with their safety that they have to go to school in an armoured car. And now there's the greatest evil of them all, the internet.
Now, these are fully dressed children, being children, playing Mary, Joseph and the donkey. You know, what is going on there? If we're you know, by extension, since paedophiles no doubt looking at children, we should ban children from the streets, or they should go around in burqas like women under the Taliban.
if I was to send my children up to Clapham Common now, I bet you I'd be more worried about some mad paedophile taking them away than I would be about them not looking properly when they went across the zebra and being knocked down. And that's a far more likely scenario.
Yes, political correctness is something that, I mean, you're talking to the man who had a hit record in 1988 with a group called Morris Malcolm Major, a song called Stutter Rap. You know, it's hard. You know, rapping, it's my bread and butter, but it's hard to rap when you're born with a
Come on, man.
So, you know, I've not always been Mr. Politically correct.
And so sick was everyone of the loony left that they bounced all the way over to the loony right.
During the lifetime of the next Conservative government, we shall replace the present system of rates with a different...
A chance to sort out the unions and the lefties and the immigrants and the scroungers. Who would have believed that the guys who sang Ain't Gonna Work on Maggie's Farm No More would end up electing her?
There'd been a moment on television when she was being filmed patronising the people who lived in a council house somewhere. And as she came out, some cameraman had shouted something like, "Are you going to be the first woman Prime Minister, Mrs Thatcher?" And she came over and she bent down to the camera and in that most patronising voice of hers said, "Not only am I going to be the first woman Prime Minister, I'm going to be the first Prime Minister with a science degree." And then she looked straight into the camera and she said, "Got that?"
Which I must point out to you in all modesty is that it would be the first person in number 10 Downing Street to have a science degree. Got it?
And I just thought nobody in this country is going to do anything that would enable her to become Prime Minister. And then, of course, I was driving home a few days later, listening to the results coming in, and I actually thought, for the first time, I feel like a stranger in my own country. Because she was like Manchester United, you know what I mean? In that you could... It's quite clearly the right thing to do was to hate her unswervingly, and it meant that your life was based on a negative. As I'm afraid being a Liverpool supporter these days is, all you've got left in life is to hate Manchester United, because Liverpool aren't going to win anything.
Things, to coin a phrase, could only get better.
No more broken promises. I say to the Tories, enough is enough.
When the results of the first Blair election were coming through, and, you know, there was a kind of public expression of tentative joy, but I felt within weeks, really, and certainly feel now incredibly betrayed. And I wouldn't know if there was a general election next week. I actually wouldn't know who to vote for.
With Blair and all these trendy Wendy's destroying education, I want to kill them. I just want to kill them. And every time he opens, you know, the Des O'Connor bloody Polytechnic of shoplifting and calls it a university, I just want to blow his head off.
Ever since he became leader of the Labour Party, he's really wound me up intolerably with his kind of intense sincerity. And, you know, when I saw him walking around in black Levi's, I burnt mine. That was the point at which I wanted to disassociate myself lock, stock and barrel from my own generation. You know, he's the air guitarist of political rhetoric, you know, with his Fender Strat fiddling away in front of the mirror. And he's a perfect example of the kind of banalisation of our culture. I do not see Tony picking up a book. I think Tony's big on PlayStation. I think he's big on the MP3. I think he's got piercings, and I think we should see them. I think he's got piercings of mass destruction hidden about his body.
Well, politicians, they're so bland, they're all the same, aren't they? There used to be a time when I was a child, there was the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, and the Liberal Party, as it was then, and one had a certain idea of what they stood for. But now, the Labour Party is the same as the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party is more left-wing than the Labour Party, or doesn't know what it is. There's no left anymore.
It is my generation of grumpy old men who are to blame, because for years we have been complaining about politicians who have other jobs, politicians who line their pockets, politicians who have one foot in private industry or agriculture and only part-time as members of Parliament, constituency MPs. We've complained about that breed for so long that we've actually killed them. They've gone. We now have full-time politicians, and they're much, much worse than the ones that were lining their pockets in the city, in agriculture or in industry.
But while politicians came and politicians went, the one thing we could rely on absolutely was our beloved royal family. The envy of the world, the apogee of good manners and good taste. Today, our grumpies look at the Windsors and squirm with embarrassment at their irredeemable middle-class naffness. That might be just about acceptable, if only they kept their views to themselves.
We should respect our past and understand our past and understand how we've got to where we are. But there is a sense in which the royal family keeps us looking backwards rather than forwards. You know, you can see that in Charles's taste in architecture. I use the word taste loosely. He has no taste in architecture whatsoever. No problem with that, except that he has a huge amount to say and a huge amount of influence, and he has stopped some absolutely stunning projects in London. One of the greatest architects who ever lived wanted to do a building in London. Somebody wanted to pay for it, but Charles didn't like it because it wasn't Doric pillars and neoclassical. Didn't look like Buckingham Palace, you know. It's a scandal how many great schemes have been stopped by him, you know.
So, not many of our grumpies are big on patriotism or waving the Union Jack. Not given to running around boasting about what a great nation we are. Except, of course, when we come under attack from our other deep-seated and long-term irritant, Johnny Foreigner.
I had this conversation with a French girl recently, and she said that the reason the French didn't like the Americans was that because before America was the major world power, it was the French. And there was a sort of brief pause while I picked myself up off the floor. And I said, look, I really don't care about which country was more powerful than another, but it was Britain, okay? It was Britain, so don't say it was France, because it was Britain. And she said, oh, no, France had this empire across the whole of North Africa. Okay, well, A, empires are not something to be particularly proud of. But our empire was much bigger than your empire. Your empire was all desert. I mean, now you're India, Canada, Australia, or Hong Kong. I mean, on the British Empire, the sun never set, and sort of, you know, Union Jack tattoos were springing back out of my arms, whilst Land of Hope and Glory was sort of playing in the background.
So, 35 years after androgynous hippies sang tunefully about the dawning of the age of Aquarius, when the moon was in the 7th house and Jupiter aligned with Mars, the news is full of wars in far-off places. We hate the Prime Minister, we hate his recent predecessors, and will no doubt hate whoever is coming next. The NHS is on the critical list, public transport is off the rails, it's all gone to hell. Our kids don't seem to know, and if they do, don't seem to care. And whenever we turn on the telly, we see this.
Who goes? You decide. To vote Alex call. Jay, please.
Just this sort of incessant, you know, rating sort of nerves all the time. So somebody gets loads of ratings because they get a load of complete bozos in a sort of house and watch them trying to sort of tear each other apart, and everybody jumps on the bandwagon.
And of course, there are, as I like to call them, the Camden adenoidals sitting around, you know, planning this really good culture. And we've got a ratings group and a focus group. We've all come together and what would be a really, really good thing to have on television, right, is get people who can't cut up their own food wandering around in sort of a laboratory rat thing that's really, really funny. We can laugh because it's postmodern, you know what I mean? It's really, really funny that they're all completely backward and stupid and end up hating each other, because we get them drunk as well, right? We do it for weeks on end, and people who've been to university and have had good educations, they're going to say it's really good television, because you know, it's really, really good.
I get invited to do the silliest things. I mean, in the past couple of weeks, I was asked to take part in a programme in which I had to go to some kind of classes to learn how to move and, as far as possible, think like a woman, and then go into some public situation, a job or something like that, for a couple of days and pass myself off as a woman. And, you know, I have enough difficulty passing myself off as a bloke, really. So the idea of voluntarily doing something like this, but obviously there'd be people who would be desperate to do it.
That, to me, is the death of civilization. I think there is now no culture in Britain. and people watch it and people talk about it. And even intelligent journalists say, I'm hooked on... what a sad, sad, pathetic, puny life you must have, you know, writing the Daily Telegraph. I'm hooked, you know, Will Tuffers, yeah, Snog, Linda. I'm appalled.
We don't live in a society where culture has declined or anything like that. We live in a decadent society, pure and simple. You know, reality television is the circus. It's the circus maximus of our culture, and it's even more tawdry in a way than feeding Christians to the lions.
It's the cult of the moron, you know, and I don't know, you know, I suppose it's fascinating, but I don't know why it's fascinating to watch. And like, you're looking at the person who helped to invent the format. I mean, you know, me and my partners had own Survivor, which is the first of these.
The people who create television haven't got time to move outside of TV, go to the theatre, go to the galleries, absorb the culture that's the living, breathing, organic culture that's outside the media. The media is a spiv media. Television is a spiv media. It feeds off everything else.
Yes, it's exactly what our dad said. It's probably what their dad said. And saddest of all, in 25 years from now, it's what our kids will say as well. Maybe it's something about the human condition. Things, apparently, can only ever get worse.
I absolutely think that the country is deteriorating. I think the young are filthy-mouthed, irresponsible. As a race, we should be ashamed of ourselves. Culturally speaking, everything's gone to the dogs. Who do you think wrote that? It was written in 1600 by a monk. So, like, what's changed? And apparently, what people have nostalgia for is always 50 years ago.
You turning over?
So, there you are. You'd always thought that they were just harmless, practically invisible middle-aged geezers, bulging over their belts and kidding themselves they can still fit into their Levi's, experimenting with the latest haircut, and usually finally adopting it just as it's going out of fashion. Apparently amiable old gits just going quietly on their way to the grave. But now you know. Beneath those apparently quiescent exteriors, they are gently simmering. Angry? No, not quite. Fed up? No, not exactly. Grumpy? Yes, that's it. A generation of grumpy old men. Grumpy to find that somewhere over the rainbow, the dreams they dared to dream really did not come true. Nothing to be done for them, but maybe their only redeeming feature is that they have the good grace to know that in the end, all they are is a pain in the arse.
People that are close to me say, you know, you're a pain in the arse, actually.
Just get a load of oldish gits and get them to ramble on.
Constant grumping on about this, that and the other. Nothing is better than it was in their youth. Everything was better in the 50s, the 60s and 70s. Well, I was there in the 50s, 60s and 70s, and it wasn't. So one of the worst features of modern times is modern grumpy old men. I'd like to do away with them, too.
Call that an excuse for a television programme and expect people to sit at home and watch it.
I withdraw everything. Everything I've said is rubbish. The one thing I hate particularly in the world is grumpy old men and their bloody pointless whining away. Just shut up and get ready for the coffin.
We hope you've enjoyed the series final of Grumpy Old Men. Make sure you're with us next Tuesday for coverage of the federal budget.